Before we begin, thank you very much to Ethan B. for joining the Patreon campaign over at patreon.com/TJOmega. Guys, I sincerely appreciate all of the support. Really does help keep the channel going. Even if you're only pitching in $1 a month, you are helping this channel survive, and I thank you for it. So, we all love a good bad guy, right? A good villain can really tell a story and make you just hate to the point where you really want to see the hero come and just beat the transmission fluid out of them. However, what we like more than a good villain is a good villain who becomes a hero. That face turn that a particular bad guy can make that really just kind of like makes them a little bit more interesting and compelling. Whether it's something that was incidental like G1 Blitzwing, or something the writers spent an entire season and a half dwelling over like Dinobot here. It creates memorable characters that generally draws in a lot of people. So, what happens when the worst of the worst actually flirts with the idea of being a hero, becoming a good guy? So, we've seen examples of it. IDW did what I think is a really good job of giving Megatron a justifiable face turn in their original comic run. But we're not here to talk about Megatron. No. We're here to talk about Starscream, who seems even less capable of going over to the good guy's side, because there's no tragic backstory to him. There is no, the reason he became this way. Well, it kind of is in IDW. But the point being, it's a harder transition to make, which makes the times that it has actually happened stand out a lot more. So I thought I'd take you through just a few of those occasions, at least the most notable ones that we can go over. So to start with, we're going to start with the most obvious place we possibly can, and that would be Armada Starscream. Now, I've talked at length about how good I think this character is, and it's a fascinating take on the character because what they're doing with Armada Starscream is removing his desire for power and simply making him just really despise Megatron as a person, how he treats the minicons, how he treats his troops, how he commands. So his beef is not just like Megatron's in my way to gain leadership of the Decepticons. It's more along the lines of Megatron is a terrible person and I don't like following him. And that feels like a simplification, and it is. But because of that change in focus, it gives the character room to work. Because that hatred is what eventually leads Starscream to siding with the Autobots. Especially after the treatment of the minicons he came to care about was called into question. And, Megatron basically just wanted to use them as weapons rather than companions. Starscream leaves the Decepticons over that, legitimately joins the Autobots and helps them in their invasion of the Decepticon base and everything. It's fascinating because this is also a rare instance where Starscream actually does befriend a human. Like not only the kids in Armada trying to just get along with Starscream, but Alexa especially. She's really firmly connected to Starscream. So when he ends up, spoiler alert, dying, she takes it really hard. She takes it the hardest of anyone there. Starscream's face turn did not last. He eventually did rejoin the Decepticons when he felt like he tried. He tried to be an Autobot, but it's just not in him. But maybe a little bit more than he claims, because even back amongst the Decepticons, he's still thinking about things that Megatron doesn't. The greater good with the threat of Unicron coming up, Optimus Prime being a superior leader to Megatron, so when Starscream even becomes a Decepticon again, he still follows this path that is far more righteous and far more good. So it's a fascinating character. In a series where I don't think the story is very strong, Starscream himself stands as an extremely strong character who evolves as the series goes on and becomes something really special. Now, they threw it all away in Energon and just brainwashed him into being like the most obedient Starscream has ever been. And then Cybertron just reverted him to his G1 persona. But for a while, for one series, we had an actual face turn Starscream that actually worked out really well. So, like I said, that's the easy one. We've covered this in the past. He's the most common example. Let's go to more of a G1 Starscream and see what it takes to actually turn him into a good guy. And the first instance we're going to look at is one of the Marvel Comics Christmas stories for Transformers. So this isn't quite a good guy turn for Starscream, but it shows that he's not capable, like he's not incapable of it. Let's put it that way. I'm using a double negative. I apologize to the grammar teachers out there. So, basically in this story, Starscream runs across a kid who tries to teach him the meaning of Christmas. As a child, like as any random, apparently homeless child in any Christmas story has ever done, he has to teach the bad guy the meaning of Christmas. All right. So it comes down to an instance where there is a van of elderly people falling off the road. And in a misunderstanding, this kid actually convinces Starscream to actually save them just to see how it feels, only to be jumped by a Protectobot, Groove. Groove jumped him, getting the situation wrong. And when the kid waves everything down, Starscream actually goes through with it. He rescues the van, puts it back on the road. Groove escorts them on their way. And Starscream derives no satisfaction from this whatsoever. What made him happy in this situation is basically humiliating the Autobot and probably confusing him incredibly at the same time. I'm not half convinced that Groove didn't follow them just to make sure there wasn't like a bomb plot that Starscream set on the van or something. So it was really just Starscream, for whatever reason, following the advice of a kid. Call it Christmas spirit, if you will. But for whatever reason, he actually did what the kid asked him to do just to see how it felt and didn't care. So he leaves, but not before turning and wishing the kid a Merry Christmas. And just leaving him. Didn't shoot him, didn't try to blow up his stuff, nothing. He just Merry Christmas and left. It's the nicest G1 Starscream ever gets, really. Like, it's the closest he ever comes to being just like a nice guy. And really, he's only doing it just to show that good is stupid. But it's an intention. So this is early on in the Marvel Comics run. How about we go late into it to see what Starscream ended up as? A little bit nightmare fuel for you. So we're going all the way to the Generation 2 comic books for this one. Starscream has successfully fused with Geaxis's warship, the War World, and he's done so with the power of the Creation Matrix, the comic book version of the Matrix of Leadership. And thus begins a quest between Megatron and Optimus Prime teaming up to reach the core of the planet where Starscream is, and this is the monstrosity that they find. This incredibly, very freaky looking amalgamation of Starscream is basically the core of the war world. The trick here is that as Megatron and Optimus have been going through all these different obstacles, some things have been weird. Certain pathways has been opened up before them. When they get in trouble, some systems activate that rescue them. All the way, they are being assisted, and they're not sure what is going on. When they reach Starscream, what they find out is that because he has integrated himself with the Creation Matrix so much, it's actually gaining an influence over him and is actually subconsciously helping Optimus and Megatron accomplish their mission. To the point where by the time they even get to this point, not only is Starscream willing to try and like help stop the swarm, he's willing to just give the Matrix back. Here he is. He's basically reached the highest level of power any G1 Starscream ever has. He has the Matrix. He basically has a war planet at his command, and he gives it up. Not because he's trying to do the right thing, but because he's turning good, he feels it, and he doesn't like it. Get this Matrix away from me before I turn into an Autobot, is essentially what happened. So it takes a little bit of spiritual influence here, but Starscream does genuinely do a few nice things here, including giving Optimus the means to protect himself from the swarm on his way out, which he did not have to do at all. And he even worries that the Matrix may have had some permanent damage done to him. Since this is the end of the G1 comics and Regeneration 1 didn't pick up after the G2 books, they picked up after the G1, this is always left ambiguous. When Liege Maximo shows up, implying the next arc of the story, we don't get to see what happens and if Starscream's good intentions were to actually have lasted. But it's an interesting it's an interesting concept, at least. We can move on from here to another take on Starscream, and this one's a lot more cerebral. The other, so previously, okay, so we've seen Starscream, try to be a good guy to spite the Autobots. We've seen him try to be a good guy because the Matrix was influencing him. This is a Starscream that genuinely chose his path after a moment of enlightenment. If you didn't read IDW 1.0, Starscream actually gets everything he's ever wanted. He actually becomes the ruler of Cybertron. He actually, he is basically, king, emperor, whatever, but he's essentially acting as the president of the whole planet. It's how he's behaving. So, across all of this, it's very self-serving, of course it is, because it's Starscream. It's very ego-driven, of course it is, because it's Starscream. This is a period where he's going through like multiple bodies, trying to look as good as possible, like getting sick of how he looks, so he just switches bodies. What is up with that? Well, what is up with that is that as during a trip into Starscream's brain, they discovered that Starscream, being a cold construct, was never given a forged body. So the reason he's never comfortable with how he looks and what body type he has was because he was never given the body he was supposed to have. When that's shown to him, when he gets a brief experience of what it would have been like to be the perfect him, it has an actual significant alteration on his personality. All of a sudden, he is thinking about things in greater detail, and he's thinking about things for the greater good. What schemes were previously just to endear him to the public, he is now trying to undergo simply because it is what's best for Cybertron. And when you watch these scenes, you read these scenes, he's genuinely into it. He's genuinely excited for the idea of like improving like the energy infrastructure of the planet. Things like that you'd never expect out of a Starscream. To the point where when faced with the consequences of what he's done and everything he's committed, and whether or not he or Windblade should be the next ruler of the planet, by the time Windblade is done speaking her case, even he realizes he does not deserve his role. He takes an hour confessing every crime rather than try to win the debate and try to be reelected to Cybertron. He gives it all up out of a moment of crisis, moment of consciousness. Call it whatever you will. It's an act of good that no Starscream would ever approach. So, again, I don't think IDW 1.0 gets enough credit for some of this, because there's genuinely some extremely interesting writing going on. Like, again, you have to read the whole thing, because it is kind of like, the whole thing is very, like, mental. But it works. Trust me, it worked. I liked it. I know some don't. I did. There is another take in the comic books, however. I mentioned Regeneration 1 before. I don't generally like Regeneration 1. I think it's a tainted view of what the continuation of the Marvel comics would have been. However, it does count for this video because at the end of the story, essentially the circumstances have left Autobots and Decepticons alike without the will to battle anymore. You know, the desire for power is gone, the greed is gone, the self-interest is gone, and it's a weird take on how it happens. I feel like it's like way too sudden. It's like just weird to me how it worked, but it does count. Starscream in this one at the end of the story, as you can see here, becomes something of a peace ambassador to other worlds. You know, even Starscream, like, just either, you know, you see the panels here. You know, in trying, you know, even like the panels themselves, they're acting like we don't even know how this happened. Maybe we just don't want to fight anymore. It's a bizarre ending, but it does show just for a brief glimpse what Starscream would be as a peacemaker and a uniter of worlds rather than, you know, Starscream. Let's see. And I believe I've got one more example for you that's a little bit interesting. So this goes into Ask Vector Prime territory. So I know that's like the bottom barrel of canon information in Transformers, but bear with me, this one has a little bit of meat to it that I think makes it more interesting. So what you see here is Transmetal Waspinator. This is following the Beast Wars series where a Starscream Spark was left floating off into space. So in one particular universe, or like in one particular canon, the IDW Beast Wars canon to be exact, the original, I mean, not the second one. We're given the idea that the Starscream Spark from Beast Wars was floating in space until eventually it manages to cross into a parallel world where the same events of Beast Wars are happening. So he repeats what he did before. He possesses Starscream. He takes charge of a Predacon attack, and then when Optimus tries to trick his way back into the base, Starscream just flat out kills him on the spot, and thusly kills all of the Maximals. From there, we pretty much get a fast forward of everything else that goes on. Starscream leads a coup against the Predacons and captures Megatron. Planet Buster goes off. People go transmetal. Starscream already knows where the Ark is, so they hop a shuttle with a captured Megatron, fly back to Cybertron. At this point, Starscream wants to take over the Tripredacus Alliance. So he's still Starscream at this point, even though he's calling himself Wasp-Scream now. However, same thing happens, same thing plays out. Megatron shakes his way off of the shuttle, lands on Cybertron first, transformation virus, beast machines, you know how that goes. But now there's no Optimus Primal for the Oracle to contact. So it contacts Wasp-Scream, who gets reformatted into a techno-organic body, and just like Primal, it is a spiritual awakening. I mean, when you literally come across the closest thing a Transformer has to a physical god, okay, I can see why your character has changed at this point. So, Starscream, or rather Wasp-Scream, is now the rebel leader against this new Megatron and his Viacon generals, and it plays out a little bit similar to Beast Machines, with an exception. In this universe, the Viacon generals at the time, which included Tankor and Obsidian, get whisked away by Unicron to serve as his heralds in another universe, by the way. See, this is the universe where Tankor and Obsidian from the original Transformers universe toy line and comic book came from. So they actually do have a part in so this universe does have a part in the greater fiction. You know, it's also where we get the twisted version of Universe Inferno, who is like the Lamborghini emergency vehicle, but is also Beast Wars Inferno somehow. It's a weird story. We'll go into like how weird it is at a later video. But it is a Starscream that actually did lead a rebellion to retake the planet from Megatron, succeeded, and then with other rebellion leaders, Magmatron, Icebird, and Rodimus Primal, there's a concept we've never gotten to touch, forms a new Cybertronian council to lead a new age of peace. It is, again, a peaceful Starscream, who instead of conquering Cybertron, is actually its savior. Now, Spiritual Awakenings will do that, so we give him credit. So, that is what I have for you. So, I'm pretty sure if you delve into all the different iterations of Starscream, because literally there's dozens of them out there, you could probably find another example or two. But it's interesting to me how many times writers have tried to create a reality where Starscream isn't always a bad guy, and trying to come up with convincing reasons why he would turn good, even though he is about as bad as they come. It's a difficult task for a writer, but sometimes that's just a challenge. And every now and then, the challenge is well met. So, thank you guys for watching. Hope this enlightens you on just how weird Starscream can get when put into different scenarios. You know, anything is possible in the world of Transformers, even a heroic Starscream. So, thank you guys for watching, and I hope I'll see you next time. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.